Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program. This is a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew LeDrew, author of the Infinity series and founder of Engine Books. Let's see what we have today. All right, thank you for joining me for another wonderful episode of the Write Project podcast. I know I say that they are all wonderful, but this one really is. Every other episode is trash. This one is the greatest. I have on with me Sal from ComicPop. Anyone who doesn't know, ComicPop is an amazing YouTube channel where Sal and his friends Ben and Ethan and his wife Tiffany go on and discuss comic books. They have their main channel where they discuss what's been happening in where they go through and discuss comics with two people who haven't seen them. What's the name of that show?
Back Issues.
Back Issues. Thank you so much. They also have Comics Rack weekly roundup off the rack. They have The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where they discuss things on a certain theme. All these amazing different sub shows on Comic Pop and Comic Pop Returns. It's super fun to have you here. Like it's ridiculous, but you're played in my house borderline comic constantly. It is either you guys or Red Letter Media, and I very much consider you guys the Red Letter Media of comic books.
You're very kind. I'm happy to be in that in that category. I love those guys. They're very much a template for us when we decided to actually break into YouTube. I was like, God, if only we could do what they were doing. I still don't really see us on that level, but I do watch them when I eat, which I think is like a big litmus test for a YouTube channel, right? Like, who am I going to eat in front of? And it's like, usually it's those guys or Mr. Sunday. Those are my two go-tos.
Big time. For me, it's who am I going to watch when I'm doing the dishes. And for me, it's either you or Red Letter Media. It's like, I in the mood for comics or am I in the mood for movies?
That's it. Yeah, right?
Yep. Fun. Wonderful stuff. Okay. All right. I have a weird, as a writer, segue into the DCEU stuff. Love it or hate it kind of thing. Yeah. I have a big, like, my feelings on it go up, down, depending on the project and depending on my mood. I'm not here to praise or bash or anything like that.
Right.
But as a writer, like as someone who like understands how the writing process works and has written multiple novels and that kind of thing, when I'm watching movies, it's sometimes you got to turn your brain off to enjoy the movie because there's some things where you're like, why would they do that? What are they setting up? You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so the first Superman movie, the Man of Steel, sorry. Not the first one, but you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah, the first one in that universe, yeah.
Yeah, the first of this era. Had some little tidbits in it, some little things, and it's knowing that the more refined a writing process is, the more each line counts. Like I use, in my classes that I teach, I use Shawshank Redemption as a thing, because you can go through the Shawshank Redemption script. There is not one wasted line. Like everything's a setup, a remind, a payoff, a something. You know what I mean? Yeah. So whenever there's stuff that in these big tentpole, multiple cinematic universe movies that isn't set up, reminded, or paid off within the movie, my brain goes, they put that in for a sequel. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's something they're putting.
So you're thinking, like, if it's if it is fat, then it must still have meaning.
Yes, it's there for a reason because it's gone through so many editors and so many this and so many that. Like by the time it gets out of the Hollywood machine, that everything's got to be justified. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So, like for instance, to use a Marvel example, the should have gone for the head. You know what I mean? Like that was a very clear setup and remind, and then there was no payoff. So I was like, clearly, he's going to go for the head in the next movie. 5 minutes into Endgame, he goes for the head. I'm like, see?
And he says the line.
And he says the line. That's the payoff. Yeah. Wonderful. Perfect stuff. DC, Man of Steel, there are a couple throwaway lines, and I think I know from it what they were gonna do. They clearly didn't and abandoned this, but I want your thoughts on it. If you think it would have been better, worse, your own theory. If you think that
Sure.
this is a stupid trash theory, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, Jor-El says when they're back on Krypton in the longest opening ever, like way too much time on Krypton.
Yeah, which is kind of an homage, I think, to the Donner cut, because man,
sure.
that first Superman movie, there's a lot of time on Krypton, and I'm like, man, when are we gonna get to Superman?
Yeah, they spend Jor-El says to his wife at some point, like, we're sending him to Earth, something to the tune of like, we've been there before, like our people were there before, like they've sent out colonization ships or whatever, they've been to Earth before, Kryptonians have been.
Right, they have to, because there's a ship in the Arctic or something like that he finds that has suits in it. Yeah,
exactly.
I forgot about that, honestly. I've only seen Man of Steel like 3 times.
yeah, that line stuck in me. And also there's a big thing of Superman's like trying to find his people, like the codex for like all of Kryptonians are in his cells, which I'm like, is that how you doing the Battle City of Kandor? Is he the Battle City of Kandor? What are you doing?
I don't think they're thinking about it.
No, but hear me out. So we've got Jor-El saying that line, and we've also got the recurring motif that when Kryptonians land on Earth in this universe, their powers fade with time. You know what I mean? Like, so Superman's there for his whole life, his powers are under control, and he slowly gets control of them. Zod and the rest of them, at least in that first movie, have to stay in the spacesuits, or else when they get out, your stuff's too much for them. They start to see through things, whatever. Here's my theory of what the original arc of Superman over, let's say, 3 movies was gonna be. Slash that the DCEU was discovering that Kryptonians did come here many years ago, and it's him trying to find his place among these people, only to discover that Earth was seeded by Kryptonians.
Okay.
And that the reason we don't have powers is because we've been here so long, absorbing yellow sunlight.
Yeah.
And that the Atlanteans and the people of Wonder Woman's place and all those Themyscira, all the gods like Zeus, all those are just Kryptonians, and it gives that wonderful one origin thing that Hollywood loves. Like, what if we all tied it back into Krypton?
They do love to do that, don't they? I don't like that, because I don't like the idea of, I mean, okay, so Marvel has a beautiful origin for the universe, and when I say beautiful, I mean chaotic and ridiculous, but because like Kirby cares about it so much, and because it's so drastically different from like most theologies, I love it. You know, it's just such a silly, bonkers sci-fi thing where it's like there were these big space gods, and they seed planets, and they blow up, and there's a thing that eats planets to keep things in check, and like there's a whole like cosmic balance of people in costumes blowing crap up, and I'm like, that's fun. I don't care for the idea of like I don't like Prometheus. You know, I don't like the idea of everything being seeded from aliens, like the chariots of the gods kind of thing. Or at least I have stomach for it in one universe. I'm tired of it everywhere else. The crypto that seems like a thing that definitely was considered by the people who made that movie. Like that fits in with a lot of what that movie was about. Because as a matter of fact, like I remember being surprised by how weird the Kryptonians were and how their whole thing was, no, contactless procreation and whatnot. And then I remember that like John Byrne did that in Men of Steel, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was like a whole thing that was actually in the comic.
Shocked me.
Yeah, but I hate it, and I don't like the idea of Kryptonians being so unrelatable, of being so bizarre. Because the whole point is that like they are like us, but they failed, so it's our turn. But the idea of Kryptonians kind of like having been the original colonists, that they're really old and they've been around for a long time. I mean, the ship being in the ice and Superman finding it and using the suit in there, like that seems to suggest what you're saying, and I definitely buy it. It's something that I definitely believe that David S. Goyer would do.
Yeah, it's not, no question, and I'm not saying that I'm like, ooh, they should have done this.
No,
right. I feel like that's where they were going with it.
Yeah. Well, especially because it was all kind of tying together. I mean, like, the idea of with the Snyder Cut, like Darkseid using Superman and Superman being the end of the fall of mankind, and reusing Zod's body and Batman versus Superman. Like there's clearly like despite the fact that they were reticent to make more Superman movies, they certainly weren't afraid to mine the one movie they made like 6 times. And So that I don't I would not be surprised if that was the plan.
Okay, and they go hardcore with the like when you look at like the destiny, but also like the end of mankind thing. Like as much as Superman has always been, and there's a lot of like Christian imagery in Man of Steel and stuff like that, they hold him up like that. In that movie, they kind of go out of their way to be like, no, he's the Antichrist. Like, instead of being the virgin birth, like Jesus, it's the only non-virgin birth. Like, everyone on Krypton's a virgin birth except Kal-El.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting interpretation, because I'd never thought about that before. But yeah, I mean, for me, Man of Steel was made by people who don't like Superman. So I don't lend credence to whatever they were doing. Like, you know, for me, the DC universe was seeded by Superman. You know, in comics, Superman is the proto superhero for everybody. And you just like, he's like the origin point, and everything else just kind of like veers off until you get like really far out there with like Frank Castle and whatnot. But like it all kind of stretches out from one origin point. And with DC, if you get Superman right, your universe will fall into place. But if you don't care about the character, you don't know what to do with them, your universe will be chaotic. And it's kind of the conceit of what Jeff Johns did with Doomsday Clock, which which is pretty, you know, controversial book. But at the same time, his theory about Superman, I don't think it's wrong. Like, I think he's right as far as like Superman being like, as long as you get Superman right, everything will fall into place. And the DC universe had a very the DCEU had a very distinct interpretation of Superman, and it's by someone's who either don't understand Superman or don't like they do get him, but they don't want that, and they want something else. And so the mythology of what they did with Krypton, and the idea of him being like the Antichrist, and him seeding humanity, and humanity being this like wretched thing later on. Like I that's an interpretation, and it's actually like cohesive, and I buy it. I don't like it. And you know, I think it's but Superman is so universal and so like visceral that like, yeah, if you completely fundamentally alter the DNA of Superman, but still put him out into the zeitgeist, like there will be a group of fanatical fans who will defend it to the death. And it's like, that's what we've gotten, isn't it? Like that's where we have people are mad that their characters appeared in Peacemaker. Spoilers. But like, those are the characters, you know, but they're mad because it's not the thing. And it's like, welcome to fandom. You know. I totally buy that. That's a very astute observation about that universe. It would not help make me like it anymore, but it certainly is probably more cohesive than I give it credit for, because the DCEU is a mess. And it's a mess because I think Warner Brothers is a movie studio that doesn't care about superhero movies. Like, not in the least. Right? Like the Nolan trilogy is an apology trilogy about like, I'm sorry, we don't have access to Harry Potter anymore. Here's some Batman movies. He won't be in it very much, I promise. You know, it's that kind of thing. Like, that's their approach to Batman. And Hollywood, I've been to one of these things where like Warner Brothers threw a bash, and to celebrate like something they were doing, they took out all the Batmobiles, because that's what Batman is to them. Yeah. He's these cars. He's these costumes. And you know who made these costumes? V. Neil. And it's like, who cares about V. Neil? And it's because V. Neil is a costume designer who made these. For them, it's about the movies. Yeah. Like, it's about making film, or just movies in general. With Marvel and the MCU, Feige is he's the choke point, where it's like, I'm doing something else. Like, we're making movies, but like Marty Scorsese is going to be mad because these are not your tradition, because we don't care about film when we make these movies. We're making stories, like an ongoing narrative that is, and it's something that movies don't do, you know? So I think it's just approaches that are different.
I guess sometimes, I mean, the Martin Scorsese thing, honestly, sometimes it's that's I'm not going to get into that, but there's one of those things where it's like, what people said that about him back in the day,
right? Like, what do you care, Marty? Like, you like Cat People from 1956? Like, give me a break. And it's like,
it is old man yells at a cloud.
Right.
That's what it is. It's like, this isn't what I liked when I was young. I'm like, nobody cares, man.
Yeah. Well, and like, man, I get it. Like, The Irishman cost probably like 4 times as much as Mean Streets. To and it's not fair that like all your favorite actors are old, and that it costs millions of dollars to make them not be old anymore, and it still looks fake.
Yeah.
You know, like I love Marty Scorsese. He if you've ever seen his like series on, he's got like a 9-tape series on like films where he just talks about movies that like 8 people have seen. And it's fun because this dude loves movies and he loves film and he likes the process and the concepts and the shots, and you know, he'll make references to, you know, movies that are 65 years old, and you know, he gets really excited about them. And he like Wolf of Wall Street looks like it was directed by a 26-year-old.
Yep.
Like, dude, his muse is film, and Marvel ain't that. Like, it ain't gonna be Mean Streets. It's not going to be Goodfellas. You know.
But you know what? If you compare, if you compare Marvel to when he did something genre, like I watched Cape Fear again last year,
right,
for the
Cape
first
Fear,
time in probably 20 years. I'm like, that's just a hokey genre film. Like, he just wanted to do that, and some of it's really exploitative in a way that like not even Marvel would do. You know what I mean?
No, yeah. But for him, he's like,
high horse.
Yeah, but for him, it's like, yeah, but at least I had like a director of photography that cared about art and lighting. And I'm like, yeah, I got you. You got me there. But, you know, I went to go see the re-release of Godfather the other day. They put it in theaters, and there were like 6 people in the theater.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the number one, it's the best movie ever made. And people are, and nobody cared. You know, if you want to get people butts in seats, you got to have 3 Spider-Man in the same movie. You know, it's not about quick cuts or like homages to the Battleship Potemkin or, you know, key lighting on eyeballs. It's about telling a story about a bunch of really like obvious protagonists that all like each other and, you know, encounter the greatest of stakes and then overcome them. That's how you get people to go to the movies, you know, and maybe they'll stick around for like a good genre picture as well.
I've long wanted, I used to do a bunch of, I took them all down at the website, but originally on the website for a while, we had a bunch of like essays and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And one of them was my pitch for movies I wanted in the MCU. And one of them was I wanted Demon in a Bottle, went back when Stark was still alive, but here was the catch. I wanted I was like, no superheroes. They never show up. It's literally just an hour and a half. Tony Stark is in there and they have an intervention and they don't call themselves by their superhero. Basically, I wanted lit fiction from Marvel where I wanted them to go like, no, we can do this too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they can, you know, I think that, but when they try, you get Eternals and it becomes divisive, you know, like I think Eternals is one of the best looking Marvel movies ever made. And I think that like, it's so well shot and it's got these like the CG is actually better than any other Marvel movie outside of like Iron Man I've ever seen. And I say Iron Man only because it's one of those things where it's like, when is it a puppet and when's it CG? You know, like that's really good. But like it's good. You know, it's a good film. But it's divisive. People are like, that's boring, and these protagonists don't interact with each other the way I want them to, or like there's a lot of holes in it. And it's like, yeah, man, that's what a deliberate movie looks like.
Yeah, you
know, a movie that's trying to do its own thing is gonna not have. Nobody went to see Blade Runner 2040 either. You know, and it's great. You know, but like I can also imagine. I remember seeing There Will Be Blood in theaters. And my wife and I saw it twice in theater. We were just like, this is so awesome. Yep. And I tell my buddy from high school who used to love movies, and he was like, boring. And I'm like, boring?
Yeah.
But you liked Bad Teacher?
Yeah.
You know? And, but like, that's what a deliberate movie looks like. It's where 2 people who love film, one person found it enthralling and the other person found it boring. And Marvel doesn't do that, but DC did. At the very least, DCEU is deliberate, but also when it's not deliberate, when they're like trying to ape off of Marvel, or when they're trying to be more generic using deliberate filmmakers like Snyder or you know, or whoever made Suicide Squad, I can't remember his name, David Ayer.
Yeah.
You get trash. Like like Suicide Squad, not the Suicide Squad, is a deliberate picture. It gets a movie that's made deliberately and it's got something to say. And they're like, we're trying to make like Marvel money here. And it's like, well, when you mess with that, you're gonna get a garbage pile because it's just ruined,
Yeah.
It would be like if they asked like Lauren Schuler Donner and Kevin Feige to recut The Godfather, it'd just be like, it would, to make it more accessible.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And put in a bunch of music videos every 5 seconds. Yeah,
like
fun.
get some fun music cues, like make it more jazzy. I don't think that Feige and Donner are bad producers. I'm just saying, like, they know how to make a particular type of picture. Whereas, like, when you make a more deliberate movie, you're gonna lose the audience, or at least some of the audience. You're never gonna make $1 billion off a movie that's like deliberately made by an artist, and it's that's okay. That's okay.
I think what you're saying about the chariots of the god theory when it comes to like the Man of Steel stuff.
Yeah.
I think that if they'd done that, like if they'd done something like that, you're right. It wouldn't have made the movie better for me, but it definitely would have made it more like Last Jedi. Like some people love. I'm in the concept. I'm one of the people who really love Last Jedi. When people go on, they're like, "Oh no, but it's bad for Star Wars." I'm like, "Oh, absolutely." As a Star Wars movie, it makes no sense. As a movie with its own themes and its own like self-contained, love it. It's amazing. It's my favorite single one. It doesn't fit with the rest of them, but it's my favorite movie.
Yeah, I recognize that it's well made, but I also hate it. It's one of those things where I'm like, I don't want this. I don't want this. And I don't care what one-time filmmaker Rian Johnston has to say about Star Wars using Star Wars to do it.
Yeah.
Like if you want to make a send-up of Star Wars, go make a Flash Gordon movie that's like a parody of Star Wars.
Or your own thing, like the Orville.
Right. Go do your own thing. But don't ruin Star Wars because you're mad that Star Wars fandom has gotten too toxic. But then you get like the Rise of Skywalker, where the hell that movie was called, and it's like, I hate that one too.
Oh yeah,
because it's too bad. On the other, it's because it's doing the other thing.
Yeah,
I don't hate them like I hate the prequels, but it's a different kind of distaste. The prequels, I'm just watching. It's like watching The Room. I can watch the prequels. Like I watch the prequels every year at some point or another. I'll never watch The Last Jedi again.
See, I never will now. I watched it a bunch of times and it's shocking, but like I legitimately enjoyed it. But I haven't watched it since the third one came out because I'm a little bit like,
you know where it's going.
Yeah. Rough. All right. That has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Sal. I'm gonna segue over to a bunch of different questions, if that's okay. So these are the ones that we ask everyone. Sal from ComicPop, what is your favorite place to read?
Oh man. In my studio we have a big, very comfortable chair we got at the secondhand store that I tried out a lot of comfortable chairs in that store. They're all like lived in for, generations. Big chair that I can like sit sideways in or front ways, doesn't matter. It's huge. I like sitting there. There's a big chair that like we used to keep at my parents' house. It was my parents' chair, and I really love that chair, and I got to take it off their hands and bring it to the studio. That's another great place to sit. And sometimes just in in the living room, I'll just lean on a couch and read comics. I just, as long as I'm able to be kind of like not totally vertical, but not totally sitting either. It's got to be like more like on an angle. That's where I like to read.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah.
Sal from ComicPop, what is your favorite movie adaptation of a book, comic? That's a loaded question,
right? There's a lot of them. I mean, like thanks to Marvel, there's like a gazillion. But there's nothing where I went, you did it. You did was perfect. I did enjoy them, but they're never like full adaptations. I'm really impressed, but it's never like yes.
Like the Civil War movie is not an adaptation of the Civil War comic.
No, it's a reinterpretation, and I like it.
And I want to pollute my hair whenever people who, God bless them, watch the movies but don't read comics. I've had to correct so many people on this where they're like, especially like people in media that I know, where it's like, The movie Logan is a adaptation
Oh,
of the
right.
book Old Man Logan. I'm like, no, it's not. You know
Not
why
even
it's not?
close.
Because in the movie, something tells me that they don't fight the Hulk's inbred children that he had.
Yeah, no. To name a few things that don't happen in that movie compared to the comic.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Honestly, here's a fun answer, I guess. Maybe. I just saw this movie yesterday, and it is the most comic book accurate interpretation of the character to date, and it's the Batman.
Oh, really? I haven't seen that yet. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I just saw it yesterday, and it's a 10 out of 10 Batman movie.
Nice.
They did it. Like that was one of those movies where like about 2/3 of the way through, I just leaned over to my wife and I was like, they nailed it.
Yeah.
Like,
wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
Right?
There you go. There you
go. Yeah. Iron Man's a close second, though.
Iron Man. Again, not really an adaptation, though. You know what I mean?
Isn't it? It's just a good Superman. It's just a good superhero movie.
Yeah. Sal from Comic Pop. What's your favorite comic book cover if you had to pick one?
I'm trying to see if I have one up here. No. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many like iconic covers that I could say. Yep. But it's really about like what gives me a reaction, right? Because it's not necessarily like yeah. You know, I do love that Secret Wars #1 cover where it's just the heroes like jumping out at you. Yep. And when it's changed, you know, like when Marvel was trying to pretend like the X-Men weren't a thing and like replace the characters with Inhumans for t-shirts, I was like angry. You know, like what have you done? You know, when you have a reaction to like to art like that, I guess that means it's something. I love Spider-Man coming out of the gravestone from Kraven's Last Hunt. That's one of my favorite covers also.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot. There's a lot of those. I don't know. That's an incredible question. I'm sure I have one. I just, for the life of me, I don't know what, you know, like I love that. I love that Batman cover where it's by McFarlane and you don't know where the cape is going. There's just he's hugging a woman, but you're like, oh, that just raises further questions. Yeah. I don't know. There's so many, man. It's and every, you know, they're always so good, right? Like, cause it's like, that's your first entry point. Like, they gotta hit you.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, I still have a soft spot for like Spawn #1 or the Max #1 where I'm like, just books that I went, what is that? Yeah.
Yep. Few more if that's okay. I won't keep you too much longer.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, this is gonna go off the other. There's a relevant question to an unbelievably irrelevant question that we ask literally everyone that comes on.
Excellent. All right.
Sal from Comic Pop. If you were a jam, as in something you spread on toast, what jam would you be and why?
Marmalade. I like marmalade. And I think that it's like getting a bad rap lately. I've heard some people talk about it on TikTok where they were like, why does anybody like marmalade? And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I like marmalade. I can, and when it's available at a diner, I'm like, hey, they have it. And I feel like that's sometimes I'd like to be thought of like that. Like, hey, Sal's here. This is so rare. I'd like that to be my legacy.
Yeah. That does sound like a fun legacy. Yeah. My thing is like when people are like, what do you want from life? I was like, I want when I eventually die, I want people to wonder why. like
leave it as a mystery. Yeah.
No, but just like, oh, Bat Ladru's been killed. I'm like, yeah, that's expected. You know what
right.
I mean? He made some people angry. We understand why. Yeah.
I get that. Okay, yeah. He was murdered. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. Well, I'm going to do my sign off here now. Sal, thank you so much for coming on the show on Right Project. Everyone, please go check out Sal at Comic Pop and Comic Pop Returns. If you're a comic book fan, you need to be watching this. But also, if you're just a writer, like, I don't think you understand. No one here can understand how much watching the back issues show and watching these people respond to the tropes and the things that writers do and helps me be a writer and be like, I know how people are going to react to that when I'm doing my own work. check it out. It's really fun research. Yeah.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. This is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the show.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on again. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.